Samuel, it's a great pleasure to meet you. As somebody who has read the book, and I haven't spoken to anybody who has read the book in the 7 years that I've been reading it. Of course, I don't just read it once. As you know, anyone who's read the book keeps reading it and dipping in. So it's a very great pleasure to meet you. I've seen a lot of your video podcasts, etc. But at this time, you're talking to someone you don't have to explain the book to, which is great, I'm
I'm glad.
sure.
I'm very glad about it.
Um, Look, as we discussed, I'll just very briefly say how the book came to me, and it absolutely came to me. My partner dumped it in my lap after one of her many trips to the opportunity shops, secondhand shops, I suppose. I'm not sure what you call them in America. And she dropped the book in my lap, and when I first looked at the cover, I don't know if that's coming through. It's the old cover, and I went, oh well. But because she'd found it for me, I read it, and I sort of thought, wow, that's like nothing else I've read. And I had at this point, this is why she got the book, uh, been reading a lot about UFOs. I had probably a couple of years before finished a book called uh, The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. And I kind of finished that book and went, right, well, that's it for me. No more God. I'm going to be a good atheist from now on. But no, something in somewhere, probably my higher self kept saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What about spiritual ideas? You can pursue those. So I was reading all sorts of spiritual ideas slash psychology, um, and and uh, and then that book arrived, and so that just gave me a very different perspective at first, and then I read it twice, and it just it wouldn't leave me until I got to a point where it's like, look, I can't just keep thinking of this as a story anymore. I have to either embrace this as knowledge or put it with the rest of the books. And so that was a choice, and so things kind of changed from then on in my consciousness in subtle ways, probably that I can't even articulate right now. Um, and then the funny, I did tell you in the email that this number 911, which of course will mean many different things to many different people, it's a strange number to keep coming up, but it just kept coming up. Every time I look at the time, it would be 9/11. Codes that I'd look at, numbers that had come on television, the number just kept coming up to the extent where I told my partner, and she Googled it, I think, came up with this meaning of the number, which was, you're on something like you're on a spiritual path. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's amazing. Perhaps somebody's trying to tell me something uh, to support me, and so I don't know. It could be from the ETs, or it could be from my higher self, but it's still happening 7 years later. I know skeptics would have plenty of, oh well, you're just looking for the number, therefore you see it more. Yeah, well, yeah, sure, you can think that, but so that's how that's how I come to be here right now talking to you. And I guess the from what I can tell, your experience was similar in some ways, in that you read the book and then, oh, well, the main message developed spiritually, so let's start getting spiritual knowledge and different paths, but similar. I noticed a lot of similarities in your story, um, with the way it progressed. I wasn't expecting when I was looking into UFOs to come across the spiritual thing, and I notice a lot of people say that. I don't know if you've heard of Ross Coulthart. He's an Australian journalist who wrote, In Plain Sight. Very similar journey, and if you listen to him now, he's had to make some adjustments, because of the spiritual element connected with UFOs, with ETs, non-human intelligence, however we want to put it. I just have to ask you a little bit about Michel. I know you've talked about him on the podcast, but I guess this is a bit different. And just I know he was reluctant and all of that sort of thing. But once you sort of settled down, how did you find how he was going in his last, which turned out to be his last, you know, a few months on Earth, really?
Well, he was very cynical about how things were going on Earth.
Really?
He was looking forward to leave Earth. He was looking forward for Tao and her people to take him away. He
Yeah.
didn't want to stay in Vietnam anymore, and he was desperate for them to come and pick him up.
I Do you know when of course, you would have maybe have gone through some of the same emotions when reading the book. At first, you're a bit jealous of Michelle for this wonderful journey, but you soon realize, oh, he's taken one for the team. He really has taken one for humanity because
Mhm. Yeah.
of coming back and having to readjust.
Yes, that's right. He actually suffered quite a bit in his
Yep.
later months before he passed away. He drank, he smoked, and I guess he was kind of like bored about his life in Vietnam, and but he was very happy to see me. Um, and he told me the thing that he couldn't write in the book. I think he was finally relieved of his mission on Earth. That's what I think of it. Yeah,
Yeah, I look that would resonate. That sort of resonates,
yeah,
and as I said, he really, that sort of supports this idea. He really did take one for us,
yeah,
um, because I would not want to be taken and then have to come back. And of course, as we know, it destroyed his family life and many things. But okay, so thank you for that. The other thing, I know we don't have a great deal of time, so I do want to move on. Um, Tom Chalko. Did you have you conversed with him? Did you go to his website? Because like me, after you read the book, I'm sure you started looking around to see, well, who else who else has read it?
yeah. I actually studied his website
Yep.
right after reading, finished reading the book, and actually I emailed him. We actually had quite extensive exchanges recently, just in the last 2 weeks or so,
Oh,
because
good.
because the book Thiaoouba Prophecy is going to be published by Inner Traditions, a fairly large publisher in the US.
Wow.
And Tom wants to make sure that the manuscript, is the version that he used to publish the book. So that's why we collaborated and sent the publisher his version. And But when I met Michelle in Vietnam, he kind of disagreed with what Tom was doing, uh, which which is quite interesting. Um, I kind of wanted to know more about that, how the different perspectives were played out. Michelle didn't want the book to be given out for free. He believed that people pay more attention to the book if they pay for it. And Tom believed that the book should be distributed free of charge, and Michelle agreed to that when he left for Vietnam. So the differences of the two are actually quite interesting.
Well, they are because I've read a couple of Tom's books,
Yeah.
and the freedom of choice and consciousness and immortality, which, well, to be honest, he's already he had a lot of ideas he'd already talked about in that other book. But the freedom of choice I found to be very useful in terms of developing meditation practices, but also, I guess, many of the ideas found in the book. Um, yes, well, I do wonder how much of that was, how much he collaborated with Michelle before he published his own versions or not. I can only imagine he sent them to Michelle to read first. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think Tom did a great job in terms of analyzing the scientific aspects of certain
Yeah.
points of
Wow.
the book. Um,
Difficult for me to grasp. And there's still the sections in the book where they start talking about that, how we are made up, the different parts of of what we're made up from, the different levels, the astral body, yeah, and
but
very complex.
my personal opinion is that there's more to it. The book is actually a warning of the people on Earth, talking about the four dangers money, politicians,
Yep.
journalists, and
Yep.
drugs and religions.
And isn't that so true?
That is actually the main purpose of the book.
Yeah.
That's why they they picked Michel and to give him all the knowledge and information. And I think we need to work on that more diligently than just believing in some of the specific details mentioned in the book. I think the real purpose of the book, because you read the books, I can tell you frankly,
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
unite all the people in the world to have a nonviolent resistance against the tyrannies, the the multinational corporations and also the people who are really controlling the politicians and the financial systems of the world. So I think that's the purpose of the book.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And even though I've got some very close friends who have not read the book, they are definitely on the same page there, and totally convinced we're being deceived about who's actually running the show here.
Yeah.
As to who they are, well, I guess when I finally find the courage to read 334 Lies, I'll probably have a better insight. But I think I know what I'm going to see, except that the parts that you talk about, which will be probably disturbing, and it's.
Yeah.
I did see one podcast where the was his surname Gel, somebody Gel. But anyway, he specifically asked you, how did you go shielding yourself basically from those um, kind of disturbing parts of translating 334 Lies, which and you said you were very tempted to take those bits out, but
Yes. Yes. I actually I
it's
made
good you
two
didn't.
versions.
Good
I
you
did make,
didn't.
yes. I made two versions and I didn't really suffer through the translation process because I used the machine to translate
Oh,
from German to
yeah.
English. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, look, I think that sort of censorship's a problem. So, you should absolutely put in what you found. I mean, I can understand the temptation,
Yeah.
but people need to read what it is. So I think
And
that's
I
a,
really wish the author of 334 per thousand lies is still alive because I'm
you
kind
could,
of leaning on
yeah,
his help.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Who knows? Look, I think one of the things I'd like to talk about, since we don't have to go into the book, all the details of the book. Um, because I haven't dropped the issue of ufology and watching what is going on, even though the book suggests, well, yes, they visit us, and some have got permission to do things to people, the Greys apparently. I don't know who. Do you know who gave them permission? Was that
Well,
the American government, or
so
was
is
it the Seven?
the free will of the grace um, interacting with people on Earth.
Yep.
The Theubans are the watchers, as put
Yes. Yep.
in the book of Enoch. They're the watchers. Unless they cross the line, they wouldn't intervene. They wouldn't prevent them from interacting with us. So that's I think that's the logic behind it. So if there's no definitive harm caused by the grace, then we are free to interact with them. But the grades are not really advanced, so I wouldn't suggest people to study them as deeply as
Or get involved with them. I certainly don't. I certainly don't want to. Um, I I think this is the thing too. If one continues with you know uh, staying in tune with what's going on ufology wise, you get so much different input, and you know a lot of it conflicts with the book. I think that's what I find interesting is for the Pleiadians, for example. I think I'm pronouncing them correctly, have a similar kind of spiritual message for humanity. That is, if they are real and they're not and they're not made up. Yet they differ in some of the cosmology and some of the explanations of origins of people on Earth and all of these sorts of things. How do you kind of reconcile a lot of those different views? Because I mean, it'd be just so convenient if they were all going, yeah, yeah, Fabians have got it right. It's the 9 planets, and it's the different categories. We're all on the same page. That would be great, but it's not like that, is it?
I tend to follow the people who can give specific, verifiable information, telling
Mm.
us how the Great Pyramid was built in a very logical manner. And the Pleiadians didn't really say anything about that, and didn't say anything about the Bible or Christ or Jesus.
No, no.
Right. So that's the thing that I look for. If the supposedly the higher highly advanced ETs can say to us or direct us to something that we didn't know, but something that we can verify and prove, and that would be more credible than just
Mm.
people saying things that seems to me to be imaginary.
Yes, which of course they get very upset about if you
Right,
say
right.
that. I mean, we are talking about people who channel ETs,
Yeah.
who converse with them on a daily basis. Um, Quite extraordinary things, really. But I know what you're saying, and and again, I have, Tom. I'm going to refer to Tom here because he says we have to develop our filters.
Yes.
You know, what I really like about the book is that it's very non-prescriptive in the way you go about finding your spiritual path. It doesn't say you have to become, join a religion. In fact, of course, they're quite suggesting you don't or follow gurus. But it's quite open in terms of your own exploration, and of course, it's up to you to do so. It can't be something that's prescribed, which of course is the problem with organized religion. Is here it all is, you know, have a look. That's all good. They take away that desire to search and to gain knowledge for your own soul, because of course we're all on a very different. We're all here for different reasons. So. Yeah, that's it is difficult to do that, but that's why you have to have these filters. You have to, as you say, look for these certain things that ET messages might be giving, or that other people are giving us. They say through ETs. Um,
Yeah.
it's the filters, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's a filter. You have to have an independent judgment to
Yeah,
see which information to take in and which ones to discern.
indeed. And like, you know, it's strange, isn't it, that so many people are going to overlook that, overlook the book, yet you and I, and I guess, well, I don't know, probably hopefully thousands of others by now, it resonates with us. It
Yeah,
resonates with us, whereas it will not with many others. So I find that kind of interesting, um, how that is. But there's some very strange stuff out there. And there's a book here called A Briefing for the Landing on Planet Earth, Stuart Holroyd. This is an early book. It's a very strange book, and it's published by Corgi, of all companies, which is a toy company. So, but apparently, according to my friend, Corgi published a few of these in the 60s, a few of these strange books, and then they all disappear.
mm,
Mm. So, anyway, this one I'll just give you by way, I suppose, of the strangeness that people talk about when in their relation to ETs. This group of people, and this was an independent journalist that investigated these people, who were one or two of them would channel an ET, and these ETs would get these spiritually charged people, I suppose, meditators, to go to various parts of the world to just meditate on certain things to help the ETs head off danger. And they claim to have stopped a major war in the Sinai. And so we have the Sinai peacekeeping agreement, which the ETs say they pretty much brought about because Israel threatened to launch nuclear weapons at everybody if they didn't win. So, uh, I'm sure you've come across the strangest things as well in terms of what you access, but how do we reconcile that? Because I don't think that was the Thiaoubans, but who was it? Who are these other ETs? They claim to be part of some group of ETs who also claim to be kind of watchers.
they don't say anything about the origin of the Jewish people, the Hebrews. If they do, then I would like to hear more about that. But I do
Yes, they
believe,
do. I have to go back and have a look, but they
okay.
do. Um, None of them say the same thing as the book,
Mhm,
but many of the explanations for the Jewish people have them as they have come here separately, kind of thing.
mhm,
They're not necessarily part of it. But what the ETs were saying in this book was that it was important that almost like the Jewish people represented like a bit of a microcosm of humanity, and that we need to get them right in in order to get
Yeah.
everything else right. But yeah, so it's pretty heady stuff, I have to say.
Mm. I wouldn't rely on that.
I'm not relying on it. I'm just sort of bringing it up as an example of the kinds of weird things you get. And after all, there was a peace agreement in the Sinai, and according to this particular book, this all played out before the peace agreement. So, there is this kind of checkable element. But anyway, it's just one of many examples, Samuel, of the different input that's coming in, and we have to use our filters to accept or reject, I suppose.
Yeah, as you know, there are a lot of people who are very vocal in the UFO communities, especially in what the news media has been
Mm.
trying to portray in the congressional hearings. But they're
Yes, yes,
so
I've been
busy.
following all that.
Yeah, they're so busy they don't have time to read this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy. I've been trying to get them to read it, but they don't they
It's
don't
just
have the
it's
time
a
to do it.
massive gap in the knowledge, isn't it? I mean, even if they didn't necessarily wholeheartedly accept it, at least they could talk to it
Mhm.
and say, well, there's this input as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is what I found very frustrating over the years is nobody, and it was only, I suppose, 12 months ago, I thought, well, I wonder if Tom has posted something on YouTube, recently, and that's when I found you. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, somebody's really taking this on board. This is amazing. So,
How many
uh,
videos did you find that about
how
that?
many videos on YouTube?
Yeah.
I couldn't watch them all. There
Oh,
was
yeah, I
just too
know.
many. I don't know how many podcasts you've been on. You must have lost count.
Yeah, 100 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And each time you have to say the same thing.
Yeah, basically the
And
same thing. It's a little bit repetitive.
it is, but occasionally, because I've watched a few for the very reason that, oh, well, you might add something different that, you didn't talk about before,
Mm.
things like that. And you've come close to sort of answering some of the questions that I'm talking about here, but not exactly because you have to assume nobody's read the book. So, you
Right.
know,
That's right.
um, so that's an interesting thing. So yeah, I suspected you would agree that it is about filters, that many ETs are, are putting input in here, are trying to influence this. Is that not true? Do you think that other ETs are trying to influence us for whatever reason?
I don't think so. If they really try to influence us in a negative sense, then I believe the Theobans would have prevented them from doing
Yeah,
so.
well, that's what I think as well.
Yeah.
The only concern is the cabal
Yeah,
and are the ET because the book also says we might not intervene. Don't take it for granted because you've got to work this stuff out yourself, humans.
yes.
And so we don't know. We can't rely on them intervening if a meteor comes again, or they can try and warn us, but as they did with the first people. And isn't that a absolutely fascinating part of the story? The first landings here, over 1 million years ago, with the first humans arriving. And I'm still watching these shows with the anthropologists going, we're not quite sure where we came from. We can't find. We sort of appear, and they try and say, well, it must. They try to find the kind of, I guess, the legacy reasons. Um, it's just a bit kind of funny, but it is a fascinating part, isn't it? It must have been as amazing to you as it was to me. And to see now that, people like Graham Hancock and others are, like Göbekli Tepe, and these places are like, oh, hang on, you know, here we go. Here is the proof coming here, and it's emerging. Of course, I did read James Churchward's Moo, and that was fascinating. But I know why nobody looks at that because he said, "Oh, it was a white race, so therefore he's racist. Therefore, we don't read his stuff." And it's like, oh, come on. Surely he was writing at the time. You've got to have the context of when he was writing. Um, well, of course, we know there were a number of different peoples eventually that lived in Mu, and some of them were the kind of the Nordic looking, and many of them were the Polynesian looking, which was the original kind of look. But many lived there. So when it went down, I guess many of the refugees came out to give the knowledge they had to the remnant. That's the way I see how it would have played out. And so Hancock touches, and others like him are touching on this. Well, there must have been an advanced race that came forward to give the remnant hunter collectors, hunter and gatherers, this knowledge.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, the hunter and gatherers woke up one morning, oh, let's build Stonehenge. Let's build a pyramid. Let's build all these different things. So I just find it's fascinating how it's playing out.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's been a serious attempt to look for moon underneath the ocean. I don't think there's been a serious attempt to do that because it's just been dismissed.
Right, right. Even Grant Hancock has a hard time getting the archaeologist to believe what he's claiming.
He's having a terrible time.
Yeah.
And so, he's been accused of all sorts of stuff as well. But yes, he does. And he's very careful. I know somebody who knows him quite closely.
Oh,
Um, and he he's very careful what he puts in his books. He has to be very, very careful. So, for example, there's no reference to Churchwood.
have you tried to send this book to him to read? Because I gave him the book. I don't know if he got the time to read it.
No, but the person who I know, one of my closest and oldest friends is working with Graham right now, and this is a guy called David Thrussell. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his name. He's got a current podcast called Forbidden Books, and he's working with Graham Hancock on that. So I've mentioned to my friend many a time about the book,
Mhm.
but he seems um, he doesn't want me to give it to him. He wants he wants it to come to him,
Okay.
you know?
Well, I think last year when I met Grant Hancock, I handed the book to him, and he took it. I don't know what's going to happen, but
Who knows? It will either resonate with him or it won't, I
right, right,
suppose.
yeah,
That seems to be the way it goes. But um, look like I guess there has to be you must have developed a fair bit of latitude in regards to, well, so long as someone's searching and somebody's on a spiritual path,
yeah,
that's great. And if they don't accept everything that's in the book or they don't read the book, well,
right.
so be it. But
So do you have any other questions for me regarding the content of the book or Michel Desmarquet?
no, no, I really wanted to talk to somebody who'd read the book,
Okay.
who's also still following the ufology stuff and just to get your thoughts on it, and which reaffirm really what I was thinking. I guess the one last thing is right now we have this dichotomy between Stephen Greer
Mhm.
and he seems to be closest because he's suggesting that that what people are seeing in the skies, etc., are mostly the humans,
Yeah.
and they're not good,
Mhm.
and that they're going to try on this. The aliens are a threat. We need more money for the military industrial complex and to control you, so you have to give up all your freedoms. And that's his kind of thesis, as opposed to Lou Elizondo and others that I guess are fitting into that he argues. And so there's this divide, there's this division. Um, I guess your response will be, well, keep your filters on, observe and you know, keep the book in mind.
The reality is that Stephen Greer doesn't read any more books. Even though I met him
Yep.
personally, I encouraged him to read a book. He refused to do so. But I do agree with his philosophy and claims. Louis Alexander, he is actually represented by a lawyer in which I interned with.
Yes, yes, I've
Him,
seen him as well.
yes. Um, and Danny doesn't hasn't finished reading the book yet. He read into maybe like 60 pages or so, and then he
I
couldn't.
couldn't put it down. Yeah, it is what it is. It must
Yeah,
be very frustrating. For the Thiaoubas, they must be thinking, but then again, they would foresee all this, and I remember their comment. Well, hardly anyone. accepted Christianity at first,
Yeah.
but then look at it now. So I guess they're patient.
So I do have a lot of work to do in the sense to infiltrate different communities and groups of people. In my law profession, I'll do the best I can, and also in politics, I'll try to see which angle I should do that. And so,
Yes.
but I also need a lot of help as well.
Yeah, well, the thing is, how we get speaking about my folk here in Australia, them joining in a big strike to get things changed, probably a fair way off.
They have to
Um,
have the knowledge first.
they have to have the knowledge. It's pointless otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, look, I know you probably need to get on. Sam, do you have any questions for me, for somebody who's read the book?
Yeah, I just want to see if there's any way in the education industry or maybe some other communities that how we can encourage people to obtain such knowledge. Um,
It's
with
very difficult in
motivation.
my position because I don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
One kind of sign that you've got an esoteric idea and what you're under scrutiny. Look, the thing is, I've been able to talk to some colleagues about it because, well, actually the Pleiadians point to this particular date here right now, the 21st of March, as being some sort of shift in energies on Earth, that it's part of one of these big cycles.
I think one way to go about it is to have someone who is outside of the profession to
Yeah.
say something about it, and then people inside can take it over and to determine have an internal discussion about it. I think that's probably a better way to go about it. So maybe I would use my connection abilities to encourage students to read the book.
Yes, because I mean, I'd love to.
Yes.
Cannot. I have to be very careful.
Yeah,
So, uh, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Samuel. Yeah, it has to be somebody outside those
yeah,
institutions that can influence it, because basically our institutions here, like yours, will just play ball with whatever the government says.
yeah.
Actually,
And for me, I don't have any fear of losing anything, so I'll just do whatever
no,
it takes. Yeah, yeah.
amazing. Do you feel connected to the Thiaoubans? Do you
No,
feel they? No,
no,
no.
not at all.
And neither did Michel for so long too, except for the one little appearance he had or something in the
Right.
yard, which sort of,
Yeah,
mm,
because being connected to them is just like receiving help from them. Any kind of encouragement or connection or affliction with them or affiliation with them is a sign of receiving help. And I want to take the most advantage that the earth or the current situation has provided to me to do it on my own so that I can learn as much as possible. So that's my goal. I don't want to receive their assistance unless it is absolutely necessary.
and I guess they would be the ones to make that call.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty freaky, I have to say. I mean, I do know they're there. I know they're there, but
Yeah.
it's one thing to know they're there and another thing to actually have them speaking into your head telepathically or appearing.
Right.
Um, not sure how. I'm sure it would affect the psyche in ways that perhaps might not be good. So they probably hold off with that.
So we have about 2 minutes, but
Yeah.
what otherwise I have to send you a different link. What do you think that Michelle couldn't write in the book? Like, what do
Oh,
you
I
guess
don't
it is?
know. And are
Do
you
you
going
want,
to tell me?
you want to? No, I'm not going to tell. But can you take? Do you want to take a guess?
No, I don't know. And
You
to
don't
be
know.
honest,
Do you want to know, or is it something that?
well, I do, but I kind of trusted that he said, "Oh well, there's certain information that we can't give you."
Mhm.
So I kind of just trusted that. It didn't have the same effect as it did as it did
To,
on
to
you.
me,
Where
to me, that's the whole motivation for me to track him down.
yeah, why you went to meet him and everything. But
Yes,
that's
yes.
that's okay.
Mm,
I don't know.
mm.
And I can only what I have gleaned is that I know and I think I think you talk around it. I think it's what you know is inspiring what you do
I'll give you an
without you
analogy.
actually coming forward to say it.
I'll give you an analogy. It will be very similar to like we are very similar to the situation in which students are doing their exam and are about to turn in their exams to their professors. So we are in that process.
Yep.
So
Okay.
this is the hint that I can give you. Yeah. Yeah.
Important times.
Yes, it is.
It is. I feel the gravity of the
Yes.
important times and very weird times, especially over your way
Yeah.
right now politically. Very strange times.
Yes, yes.
And look, the other, just to finish, I totally agree because most people I know, oh, we're heading for war. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a war. No, it doesn't necessarily have to be a war, and I'm with you on that, and I'm trying to, project out there. No, 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 we don't have to go to war. It doesn't have to be a war. It's not inevitable. And if we can get the critical mass, as Deepak Chopra